You're listening to the 95 podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 95 podcast. This is Dale Sellers, Executive Director at 95 Network. And I'm already so pumped about my guest today. I've never met him before, but as soon as his picture came on the Zoom call, I saw deer heads and turkey feathers in the background. And so there's an immediate connection with Josh. Josh, how are you doing, buddy?
I am doing fantastic, brother. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm just enjoying life. And as I said, it's just really cool. I love the backdrop you have here. If you guys normally just listen to the podcast, you may want to go at least look at it for a few minutes on YouTube so you can see his background. Hey, can you fan it? Yeah, fan it. Let's see the deer. There we go. We got turkey feathers over there and over there. What a great way to start a podcast. Now, where is it you live?
I live in a small town called Greensburg, Louisiana, which is about an hour and a half north of New Orleans, maybe an hour northeast of Baton Rouge.
Okay, so you when you go to New Orleans, you have to go across that big long bridge, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Long Bridge.
That's the only bridge I've ever been on where I felt like I was in a boat when I was driving my car.
Yes, sir. Our call to fame here in Southeast Louisiana are long bridges across
Yeah.
the areas.
And some people may wonder this because I asked you this too. So you're not really close to Monroe where the Duck Dynasty people are, right?
No, sir. No, sir. They're in North Louisiana. In fact, we kind of give that over to Arkansas. Their culture is completely different from what we
Yeah.
are down here in the South. But
They're more cityfied. Is that what
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, I enjoy the Duck Dynasty series, and they have the new one that just came out called the Revival, and it's built basically around their grandkids, and so being a granddad, I really love it. But they've been impactful. For Josh, take us a few moments and kind of tell us about you. What's your story?
Man, so raised in a Christian home. I remember as a young fella, when I was probably about 11 or 12 years old, I felt this call to preach the word. And so the pastor of the church that I grew up in started letting me preach at 12, 13 years old.
Wow.
Started preaching in the prisons and at the nursing home as a little fella. Did some pulpit supply when I was about 16 or 17. And then probably about 19 years old, surrendered fully to ministry, started pastoring churches. I was at my first church when I was 19,
Cool.
a little small country church out in the middle of the woods. And then I did what every young man does when he's called to ministry. It's just I went to school, went to seminary. I got my undergrad and then went to seminary to get my master's. And then it was kind of like stair stepping, small country church, a suburban church, and then a city church. But somewhere along that journey, the Lord just kind of introduced me and really pulled my heart towards what we call movement, rapidly reproducing disciples
Hmm.
in small churches. So I went into church planting and did that for 13, 14 years. In that time, I joined forces with E3 Partners and I Am Second, and I've been serving with them for about, it'll be 7 years at the end of this year.
What is I Am Second? For those who may not know.
Yeah, so I Am Second is the media ministry of E3 Partners, which is a church planting ministry.
Okay.
And so the idea was with I Am Second, when it first started 16 years ago, guy had an idea just to lift the name of Jesus high, just based off of the promise that was given to us in the word that if we lift high the name of Jesus, he will draw all men. So what it started off with some billboards around the Dallas area. It got some traction. We started filming some individuals who had a platform about their journey with Christ, just trying our best to lift the name of Jesus. And then over the last couple of years, we tried to take a shift with the I Am Second, still telling those transformational stories of how God can impact the life. But now we want to tell the story beyond the chair. Like, what does it look like to live your life with that transformational story and the power of the Holy Spirit in you? And so I Am Second, like I said, has made this transition, which is one of the reasons why we felt it kind of important for the ministry just to kind of put out a study to help the local believer, the local church really embrace what it is to live on mission.
That's really cool, man. Now, you married?
Yes, married to my wife. Next month will be 22 years. We have,
Congratulations.
thanks, man. We have almost said 22 kids. No, we only have 6 kids, three
Only,
boys,
only have 6 kids.
3 boys, 3 girls. One of them's at the seminary that I graduated from. He's
Oh,
getting
that's
married
cool.
in August, and then they stair step down from there.
That's cool, man. So you have I guess, some balance in your life because you do enjoy the outdoors as well as doing ministry. Before we kind of dive into our topic today, one of the issues that we run into a lot with pastors is we can't get them to seem to take a day off. So how are you in that rhythm?
Next question. I'm not
Uh,
doing that. Yeah, well, so I have married by far again, I know people would argue with me, but I think I would win the argument. But I believe I've married the most impressive woman on the face of the earth. And so she
okay.
does a really good job of helping me stay grounded
Hmm.
and helping us stay balanced with family life
Hmm.
and ministry life. And so I think the Lord put her in my life to help me kind of balance that because I'm a guy that if it's in front of me, I want to do it. I want to chase after it. I want to see it get done. But she's the one that helps me kind of pump the brakes and learn. She's taught me over the years how to say no to certain things. And so I would say that's how I've balanced things over the years, that beautiful woman that God's given me.
That's awesome, dude. And I think it's awesome you listen to her because lots of us would say we have beautiful women, but in our lives that God's put there if we're men, and then if we're our lady ministers that are listening would say that about their husbands, but it doesn't do any good if you didn't listen to them if they try to share their heart with you, you know. And
That's
so
right.
it's pretty cool. Well, today we're going to focus on discipleship, which is your passion.
Yes, sir.
And as I had told you before we started recording, we've done multiple podcasts around the theme of discipleship this year, specifically here in 2025. And part of the reason is simply because churches don't do it. We talk about it. So before we get into all that you do, kind of define what discipleship means to you.
So I think when I hear the word discipleship, I think of that word discipline, right?
Hmm.
What disciplines are we handing off to the next generation of believers? So if I lead somebody to faith in Christ, I want to discipline them, show them simple spiritual disciplines that can help them on their journey to look more like Jesus tomorrow than they do today.
Okay.
Certainly, I want to give them a head knowledge, right? I want them to understand the word, but if they're not learning how to apply the word, then I believe that I have failed as a disciple maker. I've just
Okay.
made somebody who knows a lot but doesn't know how to practice anything. I think back growing up, I was raised in a home where I practiced martial arts from the time I was a little bitty fella until I was 30. And the reason I had to stop at 30 because I was waking up with new pains every day. But I
Yep.
remember discipline
Wait till
of
you're
doing it.
60.
You're 60?
63, my friend. Just turned 63 last
Brother,
week.
you look sharp for
Well,
63.
I
That is
appreciate that,
fantastic.
but I do have the pain.
This
So
is
anyway, I didn't mean to
cancer.
interrupt you, but I just was like, you have no idea what's coming. So
Yeah,
anyway,
but
you woke up.
yeah, so yeah, when I hit about 30, I got tired of waking up with new injuries every week. So, but those disciplines that I learned contributed to the effectiveness as a competitor. Likewise, when we walk with Jesus, these muscles we have to build, it can't just depend on what we know. It has to know, it depends on how we practice.
Mhm.
So what we need to do our best as disciple makers is just give these disciplines away to the ones that God has entrusted us with. And hopefully, as they walk with the Lord with encouragement and accountability from those who are pouring into them, we can help them look more like Jesus tomorrow than they do today. And so I think that's one thing that a paradigm shift that needs to take place in the church is that we need to move from not just a knowledge-based discipleship, but an obedience-based discipleship, a faith that we practice.
A lot of churches would have, especially in the older days, would have a Sunday school program. And I grew up in a Baptist church, so we had Sunday school on Sunday morning and a thing called training union on Sunday night. But all we did was sit and read.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it didn't really. Well, what I will say about my life is, and I think this is kind of what you're alluding to. The things that discipled me were the relationships that I had. It was teachers specifically. It was mentors. It was a crew of folks. It wasn't just like one, but I wanted to be like them because I saw Jesus in them. But as you were saying, and I want you to kind of dive into this a little bit more. I mean, don't we have just more of an educational? I'm not anti-education, but isn't that more the focus of discipleship, or has been, and it's not really working?
That's right. Well, if you were to look at the church in the West, all
Yeah.
right, we are probably the smartest church to have ever existed since the inception of the church.
Hmm.
Because the contributions of our church fathers over the years, we have 2,000 years worth of knowledge, right? And this is all at our fingertips, especially with technology today, but it's not producing any more believers. It's not furthering and expanding the kingdom. So what we can, ascertain from that is that it's not just about knowing our faith.
Hmm.
We have to be willing to invest in people and teach them how to practice their faith. And so, from a church point of view, if you're a church leader, a Sunday school leader, those Sunday schools are important, right? You
Yeah.
want to learn, you want to create some rhythms of being a part of the body. But if we're not creating rhythms for people to get out and share their story and God's story, if we're not creating rhythms for people to actually be a disciple maker,
Hmm.
then we should not be surprised that the lay the laity of the church
Yep.
is not participating in kingdom work. And so we just have to create those on rhythms, those on ramps, those rhythms for people to kind of step into actually practicing their faith. And that requires investment in relationship. That requires me standing shoulder to
Hmm.
shoulder with individuals, getting in the boat as Jesus did with his disciples and walking through this life with them. And that can be difficult, and we have to prioritize that in this endeavor to make disciples.
Gina, my wife, and I were yesterday as we left church. I'm attending a local church where you'd love our pastor too, because he'll out hunt you.
Oh yeah.
In fact, yesterday was as we recorded this. Yesterday was Father's Day, and everybody was supposed to. They call it Man Day. They don't call it Father's Day, and you're supposed to wear your favorite team jersey or whatever. Our pastor preached in camo because he massively loves the deer hunt. But as we left church yesterday, I was just telling Gina, I said, I feel like a lot of people can't share their faith because they feel like they have to know all the right passages and all the right steps. When reality is, shouldn't sharing your faith just be part of just talking about what Jesus is doing in your life?
Yeah, so man, when I have opportunities to train churches, which is often,
Hmm.
one thing I try to remind them of, what does Acts 1:8 say? It says that when you receive power, the Holy Spirit comes upon you, you receive power, and what are you empowered to do? To be a witness, right?
Hmm.
And you've probably watched a few courtroom movies and TV shows. A witness is somebody who just tells their side of the story.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't require education.
Hmm.
That doesn't require experience. That doesn't require a 4-year degree from the seminary. That just requires the fact that you have a story and then you get out and share it. Share your story. You'll remember the story of the demoniac, right?
Yep. Hmm.
So Jesus cast out the demons. They go into a bunch of pigs and then they jump off in the water and drown themselves. Now, all of a sudden, this man who is a lunatic is in his right mind,
Hmm.
right? He wanted to go with Jesus. And what did Jesus tell him to do? Did he say, hey, what I want you to do first is I want you to go is learn as much as you possibly can from the local church down the road, get a seminary degree, and then help me reach the Decapolis? No.
No.
He said, go tell them what I've done for you. And so if we can help the laity of the church, if we could help our members, just, hey, tell your God story. Tell people in your family, tell them at work, like, this is how God has changed my life. I was a crazy man. I made a lot of bad decisions. God loved me, and now my life has meaning and purpose. Do you have a story like that?
Do you think maybe part of what's missing is that we as pastors, and our podcast is specifically designed for small and mid-sized church leaders, is it maybe because we're not modeling this?
Mm, well, so
Go
I
wherever you
would.
want to go, bud.
So let me start here.
Okay.
I believe that I pastored. So for better than 20 years, I've pastored, and so I would think that the institution of a church really can be a cumbersome responsibility, especially with a small church, even a
Yep.
medium-sized church. And so, what typically happens is the leader of the church, or even the small staff of the church, is tasked with the responsibility of doing everything in the church. And
Mhm.
so, not prioritizing sharing the gospel, not prioritizing one on one on three, one on small group
Mhm.
discipleship sometimes gets overlooked. And so I would say that it's nothing that is done on purpose. I would just say that the whirlwind of running a church robs the leadership of an opportunity to step into those rhythms. So, this is why it's super important that we multiply leaders in our church so that the burden of running the institution is spread across so that everybody in the church can really step into that great commission calling that heaven has given us through the person of Jesus to multiply disciples. And so I think again, I would not place all of the responsibility of having to model, but I believe the reason why we do have some of our pastors that can't step into that because of the whirlwind of running a church, the institutionalized church, it's just cumbersome. And so we've got to figure out how we can get to a space of creating leaders that we're a pipeline, a launching pad for leaders that are multiplying the kingdom throughout the community.
Let's dive into that a little bit because it's 'cause most, and again, that we're not picking on small church pastors. We're already acknowledging that either sometimes it's you who your expectations of yourself are too high, but typically it's the congregation's expectations. And one of the things that I have said multiple times is in our conferences on even on our podcast, most small churches are known for doing 20 things poorly instead of one or two things well.
That's
And
it.
that flows out of us feeling like we have to offer everything that the church down the street of 3000 offers. And we can't do that. We don't have the people, the finances, the space, there's all the reasons why. So if a small church pastor or even a youth pastor, or a children's pastor, they're listening right now and they're like, okay, I want to be a disciple maker who prioritizes that. Walk us through what you would do because you've been there, you've pastored, and you've been there. What are some good next steps we can take to make that shift?
Yes, man, that is a fantastic question. And so, a lot of the churches that I have an opportunity to consult with to help them make this paradigm shift is I have to help them first understand if you pastor a church of, I think the average size church in the US is 65.
Yep.
I think,
It
yeah.
was 75 before the pandemic, and it's now 65.
Yeah. All right. So 65, right? Of that 65 in your church, or so let's just bump it up to the 100, right?
Yeah,
There's
for
100
just for
people
sake.
in your church. Yeah. Uh, you are not going to be able to move all 100 at the same pace towards multiplication, towards the expansion of the kingdom. But in every church of about 100, there's going to be about two or three who are hungry to be a part, to
Hmm.
see things change. And so, what I try to encourage is like wrap your arms around those two or three. Now, don't do that at the sake of forsaking everybody else in the church, but the ones that you pour your life into, the ones that you walk with, the ones that you journey with, pour it into them and encourage them to find another two or three to pour into to do the same thing with. I mean, this is exactly what Jesus modeled for us, right?
Yes.
He came into this world, right? And as he launched his ministry, he didn't wrap his arms around the entire Jewish community of Galilee. He wrapped his arms around the few that said, "Yes, I'll drop my nets and I'll follow you." And then he poured his life into those for 3.5 years. And he poured his life into them. He showed them how to serve. He gave them knowledge, right?
Mhm.
But more importantly, he showed them disciplines of how to live this multiplicative lifestyle. And then once Jesus died for our sins, rose on the third day, and ascended to the right hand of the Father, where he was coronated as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, this church was launched at the when the Holy Spirit came down on the day of Pentecost
Hmm.
to multiply this. And we are feeling the results of that 2,000 years later. So if you have a church of 100, instead of trying to move the entire 100 people in your church toward these multiplicative principles, embrace the few that are saying yes. Embrace the few that are saying, I want more, and invest your time and your life into them. Still serve and love on your church, pastor them well, but develop those few to become disciple makers that are just saying yes. We always tell people that the filter for finding the few is obedience, right? It's
Mm,
always obedience. People who are saying yes to the word, those are the ones that you want to pull in and give them more things to say yes to. Obedience is always the filter. And so even I tell pastors all the time, the people that you're thinking of right now, the
mhm.
three or four, may not be the three or four that you're looking at 6 months from now, because obedience is always going to be the one that really kind of highlights who's hungry, who wants to take the next step.
Dude, you're on it today. We have a few, maybe an altar call and receive an offering. I tell you what I want to do. Let's take a short break. When we get right back, I want to dive into even a little deeper into what you just said. So we'll take a short break. We'll be right back with Josh. Back here with Josh, just kind of talking through some things. And Josh, as you were just making that last point, I was reminded of something that someone said to me at a conference one time. Because we have one of our conferences, we actually have a session we teach leadership development. And I had someone tell me, well, leadership development is not in the Bible. And I said, well, you ever heard of this guy named Jesus? That's what he did for 3 years. And to go to your point earlier, Jesus had there were large groups. He had the 70, he had the 12, he had the three, he had the one. And he wasn't that he was picking out people and saying you're better than others, but he identified something in them. He saw potential in them. Help us understand when you talk about looking for people who are obedient, or well, how do we identify potential in people that would be someone we could hand things off to?
Oh man, that's such a great question. And there's a simple way to do this, okay?
Okay.
So let's just say I'm pastoring a church. And we want to start shifting towards an approach of canvassing the entire community with prayer walking.
Okay.
Because that's a good place to start if you want to do evangelism, right? Let's just start with prayer walking. And so I would say, as a pastor, hey, this Tuesday night, we're going to meet at 6 o'clock and we're going to prayer walk, the neighborhood right down the road from us.
Okay.
From
So
six,
define prayer walk before you keep going, just for so who may have not done that or aren't familiar with it.
simply is I'm just going to take somebody with me and two of us, the way I would do it. Yeah, I mean, you can
Sure.
certainly mold and make this into you want the way you want, but we would just take this neighborhood and we're just going to walk the neighborhood. I might bring my dog so I don't look like a creeper, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to walk the neighborhood and I'm going to pray over every house.
Okay.
That God would show his favor, that God would reveal himself to them, that God
Okay.
would give us opportunity to engage. And we would do that for every house in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And let's just say as a church, we had a vision to pray for every neighborhood within 2 miles of our church. And it's going to start Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Well, there are going to be some people that are going to want to be a part of that.
Okay.
So you have 10 or 12 people show up that first Tuesday night, but you do that for 3 or 4 Tuesdays in a row, and you're going to kind of dwindle it down to about 5 or 6 people.
Okay.
Those 5 or 6 people that are hungry to share the gospel, obviously God's given a passion for
Mm-hmm.
those 5 or 6 because they said yes. That's who I give my time to. That's who I start to develop as a disciple. And then I want to pour into them the rhythms of doing it with somebody else. So they're going to come with me every Tuesday night and we're going to prayer walk.
Okay.
And then after a few weeks, let's just say we canvass the entire community with prayer over the course of a couple months. Then I'm going to say, all right, hey, let's circle back. Now we want to engage. All right. So from there, I might go from 5 or 6 down to 2 or 3. Like we're going to engage with knocking on the door and just praying for our neighbors.
Okay.
If we get to the gospel, praise God. Well, when it goes from 5 or 6 down to 2 or 3, now I've got some even more stout followers of Jesus. Now, again, I'm not trying to paint the few that have fallen off as they're reprobates and we need to
Yeah.
turn our backs on them, but I'm saying for those that I want to make disciples, that I want to give my time to, is the ones that keep saying yes. They keep saying yes because obedience is the filter. Does that make sense?
Sure. And those people also must have a passion for the community. One of the things that I've shared that I learned as a pastor. I pastored for 12 years, and one of the things that I learned, I used to, if people started pushing me, well, I say it like this, pushing from underneath trying to get me to do certain things or go certain ways. I was very resistant to that, and I would label them as Jezebels because, it's like, hey, I'm the pastor, I'm the one casting vision. But what I discovered for a lot of pastors is they never cast vision. They never talk about where we're going or what we're doing. And sometimes you have people in your congregation that love Jesus, they love the church, they love me as the pastor, but I'm not painting a picture or leading anywhere. And because of their passion for their community and the loves that they have, they try to get me to do the right thing.
Sure.
So in marriage, it's called nagging. If you ask most men, what is it, that they don't like them. But when women nag, often they're saying, hey, I'm feeling a little insecure because I don't know where we're going. Do you
Sure.
see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
So with
Yeah.
those people, that passion inside is really something we should release instead of squash.
That's right. That's right. So vision is key, right?
Okay.
And this is what's crazy is that when you talk about I get to work with a lot of churches, and when you hear what their vision is, a lot of times that vision is inwardly focused.
Always.
It's about butts in the chair, right?
And
Uh,
budgets.
that's and budgets, that's right. And so
Mhm.
it's about building this thing, right?
Mhm.
Rather than expanding the kingdom. Now, if you expand the kingdom, you get butts in the chair, but like the vision of the kingdom has to come first. And so
Yes.
what we do is we as leaders of churches, we just start to look and say, all right, what vision can I cast, right? The Lord left us here to reach more. So that's where our vision has to start. Acts 1:8. What was the vision? Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria to the ends of the earth. It was always about going, going, going. And we don't see like this vision from Jesus in Acts 1:8 to grow, 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 but it was go, go, go. And so
Mhm.
the more that we can help people understand that vision, then that serves as kind of like, okay, I know why I go to this church. It is to reach this community. And then what tends to happen when that vision is communicated clearly, you don't have as much from the bottom trying to redirect that vision because you have hammered that vision over and over and over that this church is about in Greenville, South Carolina, or wherever your church is
Mhm.
about breaching new territories with the beauty of the gospel. And then naturally, what's going to happen is you're going to get more people that affiliate, that assimilate into your church community.
Jesus said that, and I've always found this fascinating. But he said, "Greater works than he did, we would do because he went on back to heaven."
Yeah.
Can that verse kind of come into play with what you're talking about here?
Yeah, and so I want to like be careful and tread lightly when we think about that passage because a lot of our brothers and sisters, when they hear that, they think about that in more of the miraculous way. They think about
Okay.
that more the signs and wonders,
Okay.
right? And so when I take that interpretation and I read that, I think about that the influence of the movement, right? They
Hmm.
will go so much further than what
Yeah.
Jesus was able to do because Jesus' time was limited.
Hmm.
And then at the end of the day, he was came to the house of, the Jew first, but he was going to use his church to get to the Gentiles. And so, but yeah, that applies here because I believe that the church, if they could embrace that, I believe that they will see that God is empowering them and has already gone before them to reach these new territories with the gospel. And I do believe that as we are breaching, I love, and this is the third time I reference this passage, but in Acts 1:8, he said that you will receive power
Hmm.
for what? For the new territories. I tell my kids all the time, it's like, hey, listen, when you come to church and we gather together, your heartstrings are going to be tugged. You will be moved by the beauty of truth and the gospel. Worship is powerful.
Hmm.
See the power of God at work is when you are going to Jerusalem, to Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And so I believe that verse is talking about the influence, the spread of the church.
Yep.
And then as we're going, we are empowered maybe to do the miraculous. You will see some amazing things take place as you are breaching these new territories
Well,
with
for
the
me, the
gospel.
miraculous is when someone comes to Christ. There is no greater miracle,
Bingo.
no greater miracle. And so,
No,
so,
that's right.
and he had to die for us to, to finalize what salvation was about. And
Yeah.
so I think, when you have a chance to lead somebody to Jesus, and they're truly broken. And it is. I'm not sure anything on earth compares to that. As for
No.
a human being.
Eternity is altered at the moment of
Yes.
salvation. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you think about most, I think it's fair to say most American churches, where did we get off this track? Because when I grew up, as I said, I'm 63. So when I grew up in the 70s and I was in a Baptist church here in South Carolina, everything we talked about was evangelism. Every service we heard, every sermon was about how to be saved.
Mhm.
And there was a whole focus on that. And there were these programs like Evangelism Explosion and different things. And we had Billy Graham and we had Bill Bright and we had all that stuff. I don't see churches as a general rule, and I have a chance to get a good overview with the passion for evangelism like they had before. What do you see when it comes to that?
Yeah, uh, man, I want to be careful not to be critical.
Yeah, we're
But
we're
one,
we're trying to just give people, hey, if you want to go in a direction, you can.
okay, all right. So one thing that I see when I just look at, and really what I've been a part of
Hmm.
in the church for the last 20 years, is that there is this appetite for some of our leaders to build a platform,
Yes.
right? And so like I want to come across as, you know, the most well trained, the most articulate, the most intelligent when it comes to the things of God.
Hmm.
So when these people are elevated to these platforms and they offer such beautiful truths and they put them in such a way that resonates with our souls, but what happens is that we look to leaders
Hmm.
for direction, and then it all becomes about leadership bottlenecking with a few, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so when it bottlenecks with a few, then the rest say, well, I can't teach as well as he does. I can't share my faith as well as he does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it up to him,
Hmm.
or I'm going to leave it up to our staff to do it. And so then we just become participatory in a church service rather than participatory in the kingdom
What I
expansion.
say is that we're living in the residue of the seeker and attractional movements. And they had some great emphasis because it got people, but it became about coming to, watch people do things. And that's not Ephesians 4.
No, that's exactly right. Faith has become a spectator
Yeah.
sport in our culture
Yeah.
rather than you belong to the team and you have a
Hmm.
role to play. And so I would say that the reason why you see a shift from evangelism over really coming out of the 20th century into the 21st century
Hmm.
is because the laity of the church, the believer, has relegated their responsibility to the well-equipped
Okay.
and said, "Hey, they can do it better than I can." And so, what do we do to shift that? Is we just have to say, "Hey, we in the West have set the bar up here,
Yeah.
but Jesus, the bar is right here when it
Yeah.
comes to be a disciple maker." And so, let me equip you up to here, then empower you and turn you loose to go multiply disciples.
I remember I ticked off the people at my local church when I was growing up because I had a chance to speak one time, and I talked about the fact that I said, and again, I grew up in a white church in Greenville or in Anderson, South Carolina, and I just said one Sunday, I said, it's an amazing thing to me that we'll give our money in the plate to save the lost folks in Africa, but we won't share our faith with anybody across the street. And someone said I wasn't kind when I said that, but it was the truth. And it's just like, I think sometimes you feel like, well, I gave some money, I gave in an offering, or, I gave in an organized way of supporting missions. And it's like, well, and we deal with this in the small church a lot. That's what we pay the pastor to do.
That's exactly right. Yes, sir. Yeah, what's crazy if when we look at the pattern that Jesus set for us in his ministry, right? There were
Hmm.
two approaches to expanding the kingdom, right? There was an approach that we call oikos, like where you minister to your oikos, which is household.
Hmm.
It was approach of sending them out to find a house of peace, right?
Hmm.
Complete strangers, right?
Hmm.
And so what we have done over the years is we have said that I don't want to reach my oikos but I will send money so somebody else can reach the strangers, right? And so we pay for our pastor to reach the oikos, and we pay for missionaries to reach and find the house of peace. When at the end of the day, you think about the Philippian jailer, when he came to faith, right?
Hmm.
Remember, he's about to kill himself.
Hmm.
As soon as he surrenders, immediately the gospel was taken to his home.
Hmm.
Same with Lydia in
Yes.
Acts 16. She came to faith and immediately it was brought to her home. And so, even if we can just start to help the lady realize, hey, it's not the pastor's job to reach your oikos, to reach your household, to reach your family, your friends, your neighbors, the people you go to the gym with, the people that you work with. God has planted you there so that you can reach them the same way the Philippian jailer reached his people, in the same way that Lydia reached her people. Even in Jesus's ministry, when he started calling people to himself, right? His
Hmm.
disciples, those were people that he had connection to and relationship with, right?
Hmm.
And likewise, that's where we can start as the laity of the church is like, hey, I'm going to stop giving the pastor my responsibility as a believer, and I'm at least going to go and reach those who are connected to me through family, work, friends, neighborhood, and the people that I golf with.
That's so good. One of a group of people too that I would like for you to speak about for a second is, a lot of us, well, not me, not you, but a lot of people we know, people in our congregations are, they're very, they're not free to share. They're introverted.
Sure.
Do you have any specific ways to help introverts feel comfortable enough about sharing their faith? Or is this something that comes up? And oddly, Barna released a thing, I think it was about a year ago. They said up to 70% of pastors are introverts, which is mind-boggling to me. I mean,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be terror every week for you. Here you're an
Yeah.
introvert and you got to get in front of people every week. But there's a lot of our pastors listening right now, and they say, "Hey, that's me." Is
Yeah.
is, is there a way we could make it easier, or where they can be more comfortable for introverts to share?
Yeah, absolutely. First, we just got to stop over complicating the process, right?
Okay.
And so, what we try our best to do is, help people first pray for lostness. Make a list of 5 or 10 people in your life who are far from God that you have a
Okay.
relationship with.
Hmm.
And just start there. Just pray, God, give them an opportunity to hear the gospel. God, I'm scared to death, but Lord, please give me an opportunity to somehow step into a spiritual conversation with them. And then I believe from there, I think we need to be intentional about getting to that with those people, getting to a spiritual conversation with them. And the easiest way to kind of breach that, that awkward spot where we were talking about baseball, but now how do we shift it to talking about Jesus?
Hmm.
And the quickest way to do that in our culture, it's super simple, and we see this transcend a lot of other cultures, is just pray for people. So if I'm sitting down with
Yep.
you over dinner and we're about to wrap things up, I can say, hey, before I go, man, you have been on my heart for the last week. Is there any way that I can pray for you?
Hmm.
Most people, whether they're religious, not religious, think about Jesus, never
Yep.
think about Jesus, they will find that refreshing and they'll be like, absolutely. How can I pray for you,
Yep.
Dale? And
Yep.
then you start to share with me. And then I just like, hey, I remember there was a time in my life where I dealt with chaos like that. I
Hmm.
remember I dealt with some hard times, but I met Jesus and he forgave me and I now follow him. And since that day, my life has had peace and joy and direction. Do you have a story like that? So it's just a simple transition, but we have to be intentional. And you don't have to be an extrovert to
Yeah.
have that kind of simple, natural conversation with somebody, especially somebody that you already
Hmm.
talk on a regular basis. And so I would just say we have to pray for it, and then we have to be intentional when we're out doing it. And so I would say that those are some simple ways to help somebody who is quiet and reserved. I have a wife that you know what, she works behind the scenes. She
Hmm.
is somebody that does not, it takes her a long time to make friends, but when she does,
Yeah.
uh first of all, she's your friend for life, and she'll hurt somebody if they try to hurt you, right? She's that kind of person. And so
Yeah.
for her to shift into those conversations with just a simple little tool like prayer has been helpful for her. Now, me, on the other hand,
Yeah.
I'm an
You go get them.
extrovert. Yeah, extrovert. It's
Yeah.
it's not difficult for me, but for someone like my wife, it can be.
I think one really cool thing that you can put them in, kind of as just in the back of your mind too, is people love to talk about themselves. So when you give them the opportunity, like what's happening in your life, or one of the mistakes I think we make a lot is we don't listen.
Yeah,
We don't give people a chance to say anything. We especially again, as I grew up, evangelism was very program oriented, where you got to share the four spiritual laws, or you got to do these
yeah,
steps, or you got to do the Roman road, and all this kind of
yeah,
stuff. I'm not saying that's bad, but again, to make a famous quote, people don't care how much you know, they know how much you care, and
that's
a
right.
way to find that out is just to see how they're doing. Ask them, about themselves. I think that's
Yeah.
very helpful.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, and you have learned this as pastoring, right? Because you
Mhm.
had to listen, and it's what's made you such a good host for podcasting. Because your job as a podcaster is just to ask prompting questions and then listen. Hopefully, ask a question that your audience wants to hear.
Sure.
And so, what I think we need to be as followers of Jesus and those who want to live in obedience to see the kingdom expanded is care enough about the people that we share the gospel with that it's not just a tick of gospel shares that we've had, but
Yep.
rather it's showing concern. Like the reason I share the gospel with people in my life is because I deeply do not want to see them leave this eternity without the hope,
Yeah.
right? And so the way that we show that we care is like I learn about them. And so that makes it really simple to
Hmm.
know how to pray for them, to know that they need prayer, right? And then also, it also allows me connection points for getting to the gospel, right? And how Jesus can step in and bring some clarity, purpose, and direction into those spots in their life.
Before I run out of time, I want to make sure, do you have a process, or do you come, you said you've done some training. If someone's listening right now and they're going, man, I really like Josh, I would love for him to come help us. Do you have some things available? I don't, books or
Yeah.
whatever it is that you can talk to us about, that you have, that we might be able to tie into, that would help us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, been working with Lifeway for the last, oh shucks, for a little while, and we have tried our best because of there was last year. I want to say Lifeway put out this study that said 66. They surveyed 1,000 churches,
Hmm.
different shape, size, and denominations in the evangelical world,
Hmm.
and of those 1,000, most 66% of the leaders say that what their church needed the most was training.
Yes.
And so we worked with Lifeway. Can I put a shameless plug in here that
Well,
will
yeah,
help?
and I'm going to include anything you have that you have links to. I'm gonna make that available in the show notes too.
Okay, so this study with Lifeway, you can find it at lifeway.com, made to multiply. It's a 7-week study
Okay.
to help your church and your small groups start to build a community around lostness. Simple tools, simple steps to help them recognize lostness around them and then be actively involved in chasing after them. Likewise, I believe the most profound way is through training with some of the trainings that we offer at E3 Partners and I Am Second, which we form or formulate a partnership with churches that are looking to make a paradigm shift. They don't want
Okay.
to be come and see, but they want to be a go and tell, right?
Hmm.
We always communicate that, but we really don't know the steps to put in place.
Hmm.
So we have highly trained trainers scattered across the U.S. that walk with churches through a training process
Okay.
to help them equip their leader to not just their leaders, but their laity to go out and be multiplicative in their disciple making. And all of that is absolutely free
Oh,
to the
really?
church. Yeah, it doesn't cost a church anything. Now, this through Lifeway, it costs you 19.99,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Almost 20 bucks.
almost 20 bucks, right? But as far as just sending trainers to you, it's free to your church.
Yeah.
And it just requires your time, right? Your
Yeah.
time, the direction that you want to take. And you can find that at madetomultiply.org.
Yeah, I'll have all your links in the show notes and how to find all this stuff. Before we run out of time, I also want to ask you this: can you share a success story with us, where maybe you came in and helped the church, or you guys helped the church and it worked?
Yep.
That would be very
Yeah.
helpful.
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of stories, but there are a few that just come to mind that both large and small. So I'm working with a church in Grand Rapids, Michigan right now,
Hmm.
10,000 scattered across 4 campuses.
Hmm.
And so just started off walking with them slow because turning a church that size is very difficult. So
Sure.
it's incremental steps that you have to make. And so started training just their staff, as I was saying earlier, just take the faithful and
Yep.
move forward with them. So just started with a few of them. and then trained them, showed them. And so now at that church, fast forward 3, 4 years later, the church has adopted a course that they offer twice a year. Their membership has to go through a class, and over the course, this 10,000 person church, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have trained over 2,000 just in the last year and a half, 2 years, how to share their story, God's story, make disciples,
That's
and
cool.
it's rippling across Grand Rapids. On a much smaller case, so because you're working with smaller
Mm-hmm.
churches. There's a church in not far from my hometown in Walker, Louisiana, that we've worked with, that we've trained. Now their church is going out once a month to share the gospel, and their church is blowing up. Young
Awesome.
couples coming
Awesome.
into the church, and it's because everybody is empowered to participate in this endeavor. And so that's one of multiple stories across the U.S.
I think a lot of pastors right now are just like, man, our church is stuck or stalled out. We're not sure what to do. Churches are aging. The baby boomers are aging out. As I'm the babies of the baby boomers,
Yeah.
and there's just got to be a shift. But the cool thing is, constant research says that young people are coming back to church. Their young families are looking. So being able to implement some of this stuff, it's not as hard as you think. And if you need help, then Josh is here to help you. He can help train you. So as we wrap this up today, you're having coffee with a pastor, and they're in one of those churches, and they're like, man, our church is just so insider focused, and I really want to turn it around. I want to reach this community. I just don't know what to do. You're having coffee with that pastor. What would you tell him?
I would tell them the first step you need to do is prayer walk. I know that there's maybe some people in your church that struggle to get out there, but I think when people start to identify and start to see for themselves the lostness in their community, and they start to pray for it, then God starts to stir in them a willingness. I would also say that I keep going back to Lifeway. Lifeway did a study coming out of COVID that 90% of the church is not sharing their story or God's story.
Oh, I believe that completely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so and the two main reasons that they're not doing that is because they don't know how, and because they don't know how, they're not confident to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say equip them, not just with a knowledge, but with actual practical tools that can help them. And so I would say that those are the first two steps. Start praying for the lostness in your community, get them out, let them see it. And then secondly, train them. Hey, this is how we share our testimony. This is how we share the gospel. This is how we make a disciple, how we walk with somebody one-on-one. And this is how we do it in a group setting, and really equip the laity to share their story, God's story, and make disciples.
I'm even going one step further. So I'm that same pastor, and you've just shared all with me, and I'm going, man, that's awesome. But then I look you in the eye and go, but Josh, I don't even share my faith.
Yeah, brother, let me tell you right now, I was working with a church about 2 years ago, and as I was talking with this pastor, he said, based off of what you told me, he said, I haven't made a disciple in my 30-year career. And so I just walked with their church step by step.
Okay.
And this pastor now is discipling 12 to 15 people a week. His church is discipling people. They're starting groups all over. And it's just they were given some simple tools. This pastor had only discipled from behind the pulpit.
Yeah.
He had never discipled somebody the way that Jesus discipled somebody.
So, folks, as you're listening right now, we're not picking on you. We're trying to give you an option of what to do. And so, if you are that pastor that we just talked about, reach out to Josh. Let him help you. That's why they do what they do. You don't have to. You don't, especially in a small church. I think we have it twisted. We think, oh, well, I'm in a small church, I can't do anything. I think it's easier to make the shift, to become an equipper, become a trainer in a small church than is a big church, because you only have one or two people that you can pour into, and so it takes a lot of the pressure off. Dude, I could talk to you for hours. We haven't even talked about deer hunting any, so. It would be let's just do another podcast about deer hunting. But man, thank you for what you do and for who you are. And as I said, I'll get from you the links of different things you have that you offer. And if people want to reach out to you, I'll put your email as well there, because I really want to help churches that want to make a difference. I want to help them. And so, man, thanks for your time. This has been awesome.
Oh man, thank you so much for the opportunity just to share what God's doing through our country and around the world.
Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.